Hello, my name's Bond, Richard Bond, and this is Curmudgeonly Yours, a show on Society Bites Radio, part of the Radio Ear Network family, supplying social interaction for the mind and soul. The introductory and concluding music to this show is La Polonaise by Wieniawski, played by Max Bond. I am your host and curmudgeon, where everything is what it seems. Nothing is what it seems. And what is not said is often of most interest. Today, my guest is Carlos CHIOSSONE, and he's going to talk to us about bringing communications to disaster areas. Carlos CHIOSSONE has spent the last 30 years working as a commercial photographer and cinematographer in New York City. He's the founder of EndtoEnd Gorg, a nonprofit that exists to connect families affected by natural disasters with their loved ones. Originally from Venezuela, Carlos witnessed the effects of natural disasters growing up. This led him to volunteer with a number of nonprofits in disaster response over the years. In 2017, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. Carlos, a licensed amateur ham radio operator, was able to connect over 400 families with their loved ones on the mainland following the storm. This inspired him to start EndtoEnd Gorg, which today uses satellite phones and the internet to connect survivors with their loved ones. Carlos lives in New York City with his wife and 2 children. Carlos CHIOSSONE, you have been a commercial photographer and cinematographer in NYC for 30 years. I've gone over your site, and one of the good things I picked up from EndtoEndGo.org is that you are basically a good guy, a good Samaritan. As the title of this program says, you and your team bring communications to disaster areas. Since June 1st, we are officially now in disaster season for 2019. I guess I'm being negative about it, but this will officially end on December 1st. But I'm sure your organization works hard all year. Could you tell us how EndtoEndGo.org started? And also tell us about that aha moment that really told you that you had to start this organization and make it what it is today.
Well, Richard, thank you, first of all, for having me in your show.
No problem.
And the main reason why I started EndtoEnd Gorg is, as you mentioned, in my past, I have seen my fair share of natural disasters, from floods in Venezuela to the earthquake in Haiti to several hurricanes. And I think the first one that actually triggered me to do this was Sandy, which affected me here in New York City.
Sure.
It didn't affect me heavily, but it did. The first time that we started doing this as EndtoEnd Gorg, and EndtoEnd Gorg is actually my call sign as a ham radio operator.
Okay.
This started right after Maria, where I saw several people from my building here and my neighborhood from Puerto Rico who were desperately trying to communicate with people in Puerto Rico. I grabbed my ham radio, I went up to my roof, and I started trying to communicate with them until I found 2 operators in the western side of Puerto Rico. So pretty much what EndtoEnd Gorg Disaster Response as an organization does is bring those loved ones together, both the survivors and the families.
Okay.
At the beginning was all via the ham radio. And at some point after Maria, I ended up in Puerto Rico with another nonprofit that we were doing disaster relief over there. And one day, to come into the aha moment, I'm driving with a doctor up a mountain, and we see this couple walking with their dog, and their home was pretty much destroyed. So we got out of the car, we start talking to them, they start telling us the stories of what had happened, kind of like a minute by minute of what happened to them. And the one part, all of a sudden, the woman or the wife over there says, the one problem we have had is that we haven't been able to speak to our family in the States. I have a daughter in upstate New York, and he has a niece in Texas. And she said, she was telling me, and this was kind of like a laughable moment among all of this, because she tells me, it takes us an hour and a half about to walk to the nearest town. But every so often, a friend of ours comes with a horse and gives us a ride. Of course, we all started cracking up. So there was a little humor between the whole thing.
And
And
so,
I have a
yeah.
satellite phone. Huh?
So it takes an hour and a half just to go to the town to make that call until you came around.
Well, the issue is they tell me we have gone twice, and given this is 3 weeks after the storm hit,
Wow.
and she tell me we have gone 2 or 3 times already, and the only place that has power is the emergency room, and we wouldn't be able to charge our phones over there, and charging them won't do a thing because there is no cellular communication.
Jeez.
As she tells me that, I take my satellite phone out of my bag and tell her what is the number, and her face just lit up.
Wow.
And I dial the phone and I hand it to her. And the first minute of the conversation is her and her daughter crying.
Oh,
Like
man.
it was a moment that I said, I mean, I'm telling you this, and I feel shivers all throughout me.
Sure. I mean,
the same thing. So go ahead.
Just you're telling me that I could just see the two talking to each other. Go ahead. Sorry.
So they're talking, and then after a few minutes, they start coordinating. Okay, are you gonna come here to the island? Are you gonna come help us, or should we go into San Juan, which is about 2 hours from where we were driving, and not by horse? And which should we go to Miami or Atlanta or somewhere that you can pick us up? So I saw the phone call going from the happiness of them finally reuniting via voice to the coordination that happened for what was going next. The husband's face was like a big smile, like he knew that he was going to get that phone after. And of course, after the call, the same thing happened. He called his niece, and kind of the same idea continued. And the doctor that I was with and I were like, we need to do something about this. We kept on driving, and we found about 4 or 5 homes that were semi-destroyed, but their people stayed behind. You have to understand that a lot of these people don't have the means to purchase a car, to have any other ways to go to a town all the time, and be able to get their necessities or medical assistance. And that's the reason why we were driving there. It was mostly for medical assistance. All of them were able to call. All of them had somebody somewhere in the States. One of them had somebody in Mexico. And we ended up in a bigger town. I mean, in a bigger town than the town that they walked to. And in a plaza, there were about 100 people, I'm going to say. They were just chatting. It was a hot day, so everybody was out. And I started asking people, it's like, how many of you have been able to talk to the outside world? Many of them had no need to. Many of them had people in other places in the island, and they haven't spoken to them either, but the satellite phone wouldn't have helped in that case either. But many of them did, and I couldn't help them because there were so many that it would have taken us forever, and it was not what we were doing. And that was, I mean, that face, the solace in the face of that first woman is what said, I have to do this. Originally, I pointed it to the organization I was working with and saying, can we do this as something else we do? And that organization is so big right now, said we can't really add something else for us to do at this moment.
So what you did is you called back and you said, look, I need about 100 ham operators and bring your ham radios over here. Is that what you did?
That would have been the perfect thing. There is an organization in the United States that actually supplied that via the Red Cross. I don't want to say their names, and it was a disaster. So no, I did that via satellite phone at that moment. We did call ham radio operators to come and help hospitals that had no communications in a diverse group of places. But which brings me to something else. For example, the EndtoEnd Go is going to be there, or is there right now, only for survivors. So if a hospital needs us, yes, we will be there if there is a 911 kind of situation where they need us. Okay. But even to other NGOs, that's the only way that we would be helping them. We're there now to serve the survivors. During my call, we saw the need from other NGOs to communicate. They were asking if they can use satellite phones and all this. And of course, we help them. But the idea, first of all, is for the survivors, not for them.
Okay. Like right now, I was hoping to interview you last month, but I couldn't fit you in. But let me go on to my next point. How can people get involved in volunteering for your organization? What do they have to do, and who do they have to call?
They can contact me. People can contact me via the form that we have on our website. Okay. There's a lot of things. As a new NGO, as a new nonprofit, there's a lot of things to do. From going out there to help us get funding, which we desperately need at this moment, to get us partnerships with other companies. And the people who want to be on the ground with us do have to go to training. Everybody has to have at least a psychological first aid, some sort of certification or training by us on them, because we're all the time talking to people. And all these people are always suffering emotionally and have a lot of anxiety that we have to deal with.
Sure.
So that first psychological first aid is not only to be able to talk to them, but also for the volunteers to be able to cope with what they're going to see. We also have a couple of psychologists, and that's kind of the only thing that I ask people to be trained on at this moment. Our whole mission is just to bring communications. So anybody can contact us via our form, whether they want to be in the front lines with us. They will have to go to training or be trained by me. And the other volunteers, if they want to help us with marketing, with fundraising or anything else, we're more than welcome on that. I mean, we welcome everybody who wants to help.
Well, I'd like your organization to get a maximum amount of exposure so it can receive a maximum amount of donations. How much do you charge for your service, and where do you serve?
We don't charge at all for our service. We pretty much survive out of donations from individuals that understand that this is a need, or from corporations that are able to give us bigger donations. The other part is what we call contributions. For example, if airlines say like, hey, we can have your volunteers travel to the nearest airport for free from here, or car rental companies that would say, hey, as soon as you arrive to a location, contact our nearest location that is open and we'll supply you with vehicles so you can move here around. So there is the cash donations part of it, and then the contributions from corporations such as this that helped us tremendously with that. Where do we serve? Mainly in the United States and the Caribbean. But we have been asked to go, and I unfortunately was not able to, but Mozambique was hit several months ago by a typhoon, or by a cyclone. And the Mariana Islands, the same thing, a couple of months prior to that. So because we're growing, we still don't have the capacity to be able to satisfy those requests. But we pretty much will be serving the whole world as it needs us. Now, primarily, if we're needed in the United States and the Caribbean, those will be what we call our hotspots. Those are the ones that get the first response.
Do you see any bad weather down the pike here? Is it does it look bad? What's going to be happening in the next few months?
We've been fortunate that so far we haven't seen much of anything. The majority of the bad hurricanes usually come towards September and October.
Right.
At the beginning, there are lots after, so we can't really predict it. There's no way for me to say yes or no. The predictions done by national weather and things like that were that it was going to be a very bad season. Fortunately, we haven't seen any of it.
Wow.
And as with all weather, it's 50-50.
Sure. Do you help other NGOs and teams on the ground?
Again, we're there primarily for the survivors. But if another NGO needs us for what we call a 911 situation, which means it's a life-threatening situation, of course they will take priority. If we are not busy and another NGO needs us to just do something quick of sending information or receiving it for them, of course we will help them. There is also the part when our part of the disaster response is over. Communications or power have been restored. We still stay there and we partner with other NGOs to help them and to be able to help them with their own missions until we need to leave. Now, it is fairly expensive for us to have a volunteer there. Just to get them there, if we have to pay for airfare and all that, it's about $2,000 to get someone there, and it's about $500 a week to maintain someone there. So we will help other NGOs, but up to the point that we need to, that our budget allows, let's put it that way.
Well, you may have answered this, but organizations like Red Cross and others offer this type of service. Not exactly, but why? How are you different? Why are you different?
There are